In this video, I'm going to be discussing some of the components to consider when you are creating your prompts to be used within ZotGPT. And to get started, it's first important to recognize that there are many categories of use of generative AI and thereby many different types of prompts that you may develop. The categories that you see on the screen here are just a few examples. There are certainly more that go beyond this list. But whether you're using ZotGPT to help you with ideation or composition, if you want to use it to role play, to organize data, summarize data, we can use it to interpret or visualize information, utilizing it as a coding assistant, evaluating content, translating content between languages, using it as a method to retrieve from a data set, using it to personalize the information that we're working with, using it for coaching, prototyping, or storytelling. These are all valid use cases, and all of them will require some thought into the prompts that you develop. It's also important to note that there really is no one correct method to prompt. Each of these different categories will require a slightly different approach, and that's going to involve different potential attributes to incorporate into your prompt. But for the purposes of this video, we're going to focus in on some common components that will often lead to a better result. And for the category of use, we're going to focus into the realm of ideation and composition. So let's go take a look first at what might be a more basic prompt to get started. So here we have what I would consider to be a very basic prompt. It says, write an announcement for ZotGPT Creator, a new tool that lets users at UC Irvine create custom AI assistants. Okay, so this prompt is relatively basic. It's just a single sentence, and there's nothing wrong with that. There may be situations in which a very basic prompt is able to get you the result that you want. But if we're doing something like this, where we need to craft an announcement, there's a lot more consideration that should probably go into what a good output would look like and what needs to be considered. So, what might be a more advanced prompt as an alternative to this? Well, here is an example of what might be considered a much more advanced prompt. Now, obviously, you can see it's much, much longer. But let's actually go through this prompt bit by bit and talk about what each part of this prompt is accomplishing. Okay? And to get started, we'll look at this first part. It says, you are a communications professional assigned to the ZotGPT team at UC Irvine. You are exceptional at crafting messages that effectively communicate information across different modalities and that appeal to a variety of audiences. Now, this first portion of the prompt is where we are establishing a role. We are essentially telling the large language model what role it's going to fulfill in the interaction that's about to take place. And this can actually be a very effective method of improving the outputs that you get from a generative AI chatbot. When you establish a role, you are really giving the large language model an idea of how it should behave in these interactions. So establishing a role is a really good component to consider when you are developing a prompt. Now let's look at the next part. The ZotGPT team is announcing a new tool, ZotGPT Creator, the latest addition to our ecosystem. This tool allows users to create both private and public custom AI assistants. They can train their assistants on data they provide and control its behavior. Now, in this next portion of the prompt, what we're doing is we're providing context. We're giving the chatbot an understanding of what the situation is pertaining to the goal that we're going to have it work through later. Okay. So context is typically going to lead to much better results because the AI understands more of what the general situation is. I would say that the context that we have here in this prompt is actually relatively simple. The context that you provide may actually be far more robust than just a sentence or two. You may even go so far as to upload entire documents of data to serve as your context. But big or small, it's generally always a good idea to give the large language model some context so it understands the broader situation in which it is working. Now, on to the next part. We are announcing this new tool to faculty and staff across UC Irvine. Some of this population already know the existing ZotGPT tools well. Others might be new to our ecosystem. Likewise, some understand AI capabilities while others are brand new. Okay, so this part of the prompt is establishing the audience. We're letting the chatbot know who is going to be the audience for the output that it provides. You can imagine that if you tell the chatbot that it is working towards an output that's going to be seen by university professors, that it's going to strike a different tone than if it was creating an output that's designed for undergraduate students, and so on and so forth. And as you can see here, when we're talking about the audience, we're letting it know not only who they are, but also giving it some idea of what their current familiarity is with the technology. So doing this, again, this is going to affect the output. This is going to change what kind of a final result we get from the large language model. Okay, now let's move on to the final portion. Craft the following communications: a campus email to all staff and faculty, a website update to the news section of the ZotGPT website, and social media posts to go out on LinkedIn and Instagram. Give 3 versions for each, striking a different tone. So in this last portion, what we're doing is we're establishing the goal. We're being very explicit about what it is we want the large language model to do. Okay, and so not only am I being very clear on what I want it to do, I'm actually having it do multiple things for me within a single motion. And it's good to recognize that. These large language models are quite powerful. You don't need to have them necessarily do one task at a time. There may be times when you do want that, but we could also just have it go to work on multiple tasks at once. One thing to bear in mind that if you do have a large language model work through multiple tasks in one motion, because they are constrained by a certain amount of output that they can give at one time, what may end up happening is that it will try to consolidate its outputs. It might make slightly shorter messages in order to fit all of this in. So that's a trade-off if you do have it do multiple tasks in one motion. But you can see I not only have it do multiple tasks, I'm also asking it to do multiple iterations of each of these tasks. So for an email to campus, a news post, and social media posts, I asked for 3 versions of each. So we're going to have quite a bit of content that will result from this. And that's good because now I, as the human in the loop, will be able to review all of these outputs and make my own determination of which ones I like and which ones I want to reject. So these components, the role, context, audience, goal, these are all components that are definitely worth considering when you are crafting your prompts. You don't need to have all of them, but if you do incorporate them, odds are you'll probably land on more effective outputs than if you were to not include them. And there's many more components that we could add to a prompt beyond these four. For example, perhaps we want to specify the format of the output. Do we want bullet points? Do we want paragraphs? Do we want tables? You can indicate how it should structure that information for you. We can indicate the tone. Okay, so should this be a more professional tone, a more friendly tone? Are we trying to appeal on an empathic level, or are we trying to be much more logical? There's many different ways that we can do that. We can provide examples. So this can be incredibly effective if, for example, you have a template that you want the large language model to follow in the types of outputs that it gives you. You could either paste that template in as part of your prompt, or maybe you upload a file containing your template alongside your prompt and then indicate in the prompt how the large language model should regard that file. There's many different ways that you can bring examples in to really dictate in what direction it goes. And references, kind of in a similar vein to examples, you can provide additional data that the large language model is expected to reference so as to help create a more effective output. This could be all manner of different relevant data types that you can bring in. But one important thing, when you do bring in this additional supplemental data and references for it to work with, make sure to specify in the prompt how you expect the large language model to incorporate those references. And be very mindful of the language that you use, because sometimes you may find that the large language model wants to adhere too closely to your references or your examples, whereas other times, if you give it just enough guidance, it could just find a little bit of a nuance in those to utilize in its output. Ultimately, these are all different methods to change the outputs, and it goes to show the power that can be gained from creating very mindful prompts when working with large language models in ZotGPT.